Commander Vexus Thale surveyed the corpses of his squadron with cold, unblinking eyes. 17 of the consortium's most lethal assassins lay dead across the transport bay, their cyan blood pooling beneath exoskeletons that had been shattered like glass. The humans, all 5 of them, were gone. "Impossible," he whispered, mandibles clicking nervously as he examined the nearest body. Korik Non, once the pride of the Evraxian Death Corps, now a broken shell. His primary heart had been removed with surgical precision, while his secondary one appeared crushed by bare hands. The surveillance feeds showed only static. "Of course. Commander, we've tracked their escape pod trajectory," Lieutenant Meridian reported through the comm. "They're headed for the Cassilian outpost." Thale's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. The fools! Cassilian is home to the Void-Sworn Brotherhood. They're running straight into... "Sir," Meridian interrupted, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "The Brotherhood requested immediate support. They've suffered casualties." Thale's exoskeleton paled. The Void-Sworn Brotherhood numbered 300 elite warriors, each genetically engineered for combat in 17 different atmospheric conditions. They had conquered 7 solar systems. "How many casualties?" he asked. "All of them, sir. The humans arrived 20 minutes ago." The consortium had discovered Earth barely a cycle ago, a backwater planet on the outer rim, technologically primitive by galactic standards. The inhabitants seemed soft, fragile creatures with no natural defenses. No venomous appendages, no armored plating, no regenerative abilities. Just pink flesh, easily punctured. The abduction had been routine: collect specimens, analyze weaknesses, prepare for resource extraction. Standard procedure for thousands of worlds before. No one expected resistance. Especially not this kind. "Play the Cassilian security feed," Thale ordered. The hologram flickered to life, showing a human female with copper-colored hair walking calmly through the Brotherhood's fortress. Trailing behind her were 4 humans, 3 males and another female. The Brotherhood's elite guard surrounded them, plasma weapons drawn. What happened next defied comprehension. The copper-haired human moved with impossible speed, disarming the first guard and using his own weapon to dispatch 3 others before anyone could react. The tall male human with dark skin lifted a Brotherhood warrior overhead, despite the alien weighing 4 times his mass, and hurled him through a reinforced wall. The smallest human, pale-skinned with strange markings on her arms, somehow appeared behind guards without crossing the space between. "Enhance audio," Thale commanded. "Told you we come in peace," the copper-haired one was saying, her voice eerily calm as she stepped over bodies. "We simply want transport back to our system. We're not soldiers, not trained killers. Just ordinary humans trying to get home." Ordinary. Thale had studied thousands of species across the known universe. Nothing about these creatures was ordinary. "Sir," Meridian's voice cracked through the comm again. "High Command is demanding answers. The humans have stolen a Cassilian warship and are heading toward the Proxima pathway. They're requesting your pursuit." Thale stared at the frozen image of the copper-haired human. Her eyes seemed to look directly through the camera, through him, with unsettling awareness. "Tell High Command." He paused, remembering the broken bodies of his squad. "Tell them the situation requires further assessment before engagement." He would follow, yes. But something told him that hunting these humans would be unlike pursuing any prey before. They claimed to be ordinary civilians, not warriors. So why did the galaxy's most elite killers now lie dead in their wake? The stolen Cassilian warship drifted through the azure mists of the Proxima Nebula, engines dark, weapon systems idle. Aboard the vessel, 5 humans gathered around a navigation hologram, their faces illuminated by its pale blue glow. "We have a decision to make," said Riker Talos, the copper-haired woman who had led their escape. Once a deep-sea engineer on Earth, she now found herself the de facto leader of their small band of survivors. "They're tracking us." Dmitry Krov, the tall, dark-skinned physicist, studied the ship's sensor readouts. 3 pursuit vessels, closing fast. Consortium design, heavily armed. "Can we outrun them?" asked Aurelius, the smallest of their group, her arms covered in elaborate tattoos that mapped the neural pathways of the human brain, a memory aid from her work as a xenolinguist before the abduction. "Not in this ship," replied Tavish Rourke, the oldest of the five, his weathered face bearing the marks of decades spent as a survival instructor in Earth's harshest environments. "But maybe we don't need to." The fifth human, Lachlan Zurich, a behavioral economist with a genius for game theory, nodded slowly. "They expect us to run. So we hunt instead." Across 12 galaxies, Commander Vexus Thale was known as the Void Hunter. He had tracked and eliminated targets other predators considered impossible to find. Yet as his vessel led the pursuit through the nebula, something unfamiliar crawled through his nerve clusters. Doubt. "Multiple energy signatures detected," his navigator announced. "The humans appear to be experiencing drive core fluctuations." "They're damaged," Lieutenant Meridian suggested. "The Cassilian ship was never designed for human operation." Thale wasn't convinced. "Maintain distance. Scan for." The ship shuddered violently as proximity alarms screamed. A massive chunk of nebula debris, propelled at incredible speed, smashed into one of their companion ships, tearing through its shields as if they weren't there. "Evasive," Thale began, but another impact rocked their vessel. The second companion ship erupted in flames as concentrated solar collectors, salvaged from the Cassilian vessel's exterior and launched with precision, pierced its reactor shielding. "They turned parts of their own ship into weapons," Meridian whispered, mandibles trembling. Thale's vessel limped behind an asteroid, temporarily shielded from whatever primitive but effective assault the humans had engineered. "How?" Meridian demanded. "They have no combat training, no knowledge of our technology." "Maybe they don't need it," Thale replied, remembering something he'd dismissed from the initial Earth reconnaissance reports. Humans evolved as persistence predators. Before their technology, they hunted by exhausting prey, following for days until targets collapsed. They can improvise weapons from nearly anything. And they understand something fundamental that we've forgotten after millennia of technological superiority. "What's that, Commander?" "When survival is at stake, there are no rules." The humans, meanwhile, had split up. Riker and Dimitri guided the damaged Cassilian vessel deeper into the nebula while Orella, Tavish, and Lachlan drifted in a commandeered shuttle toward Thale's crippled ship. "Remember," Orella said, her fingers dancing over the alien control panel with newfound fluency, "we only want their navigation data. No unnecessary casualties." Tavish checked the makeshift weapons they'd assembled, tools repurposed into instruments of self-defense. "These creatures abducted us, experimented on us, and were planning genocide on our planet." "Define unnecessary." Lachlan's eyes remained fixed on the approaching vessel. "We're not killers by nature. But neither are we prey. They need to understand that." As their shuttle silently approached the damaged consortium ship, Orella accessed the alien communication frequencies, broadcasting a simple message in the consortium's own language, which he had partially decoded during their captivity. "You hunt us because you do not understand us," her voice echoed through Thale's command center. "We are returning home. Follow, and we will demonstrate what humans do to threats against our world." Thale felt his crew's nervous energy as the human shuttle latched onto their hull. They had seen the footage from the transport bay and Cassilian outpost. These soft, fragile-looking creatures had decimated the consortium's finest with improvised weapons and what appeared to be standard civilian-level augmentations. "Should we engage defense protocols?" Meridian asked, her claw hovering over the security controls. Thale stared at the external camera feed, showing 3 humans in makeshift environment suits moving with purpose across his ship's hull. "No," he said finally. "Open the airlock and prepare the navigation data for transfer." Sometimes, even apex predators recognize when they're outmatched. The Central Consortium Directive Vessel Inevitable Dominance hung in orbit above the gas giant Kalurax, its 12-kilometer hull reflecting the violet storms raging below. Within its sanctum core, 7 Archons, the governing council of the 16 most advanced species in the known universe, deliberated on what Counselor Zefthal was now calling the human question. "These reports are disturbing," rumbled Supreme Archon Volus Dern, his crystalline body refracting light in agitated patterns. Commander Thale's encounter makes 17 consortium vessels that have failed to contain just 5 human specimens. "They're multiplying," warned Archon Mezerin, her gelatinous form pulsing with bioluminescent alarm signals. Intelligence indicates they've established outposts on 3 abandoned mining stations in the Proxima Pathway. Holographic footage played before the Council. Surveillance showing humans teaching other liberated captive species how to modify consortium technology, establishing defensive perimeters, and most concerning, replicating Earth cultural patterns. Music, art, literature, ideas spreading like contagion. Meanwhile, the 5 original humans had split up, each becoming a nucleus around which resistance formed. On the forgotten moon of Theros, Riker Talos had transformed a derelict refueling station into a haven for escaped specimens. Consortium hunters had come 3 times. None returned. "We've analyzed their combat methodology," reported Archon Krelvox, the Council's military strategist. "The humans employ what they call asymmetric warfare. They refuse direct confrontation where we hold advantage. They target supply lines, communication relays, and psychological pressure points. They're dismantling our operational structure rather than our forces." "They're barbarians," hissed Archon Zefthal, "using primitive techniques against superior technology." "And yet," interjected Archon Marilia, the Council's eldest member, "their primitive techniques are proving remarkably effective." Commander Thale, recently elevated to the Archon Council after his encounter with the humans, remained silent until now. "You misunderstand them," he said finally. "I've studied them extensively since our interaction. Humans aren't more physically powerful than many species we've conquered. They're not inherently more intelligent. Their uniqueness lies elsewhere." He activated his personal data stream, projecting images of Earth's history. Humans adapting to every environment on their planet, surviving ice ages, plagues, catastrophic wars. "Humans evolved on a death world," Thale continued. "Their planet bombarded them with disasters that would have extinguished most sentient species. Instead of developing biological specializations like our species, they maintained adaptability. Their greatest weapon isn't strength or technology, it's psychological resilience and environmental adaptability." Across the galaxy, Dmitry Krov had established contact with 7 previously unknown species who had escaped consortium captivity. Using a converted consortium analysis facility, they were reverse-engineering weapons technology at an alarming rate. Orelevis had disappeared into the secretive Sylvan hegemony, a federation of plant-based intelligences long neutral toward consortium activities. Now reports indicated the hegemony was providing sanctuary to fugitives and considering a defensive pact with the growing human-led coalition. Tavish Rourke had been spotted on 17 different worlds, always vanishing before capture, leaving behind trained resistance cells comprised of indigenous populations previously thought incapable of coordinated action. And Lachlan Zurich had somehow infiltrated the consortium's interspecies trading network, leveraging economic pressure against political leverage in ways that threatened centuries-old alliances. "The 5 have become 50,000, reported the intelligence Archon. "Species that never cooperated are forming alliances. They call themselves the Liberated." Supreme Archon Volus Dern's crystalline surface darkened with concern. "Your recommendation, Commander Thale?" Thale projected one final image. His own encounter with Riker Talos, when she had boarded his vessel not to destroy it but to negotiate. "The humans have a concept they call mutually assured destruction," he explained. "Their history is filled with moments when they faced extinction yet found equilibrium with their enemies. They don't want to destroy the consortium. They want us to recognize them as equals." "Absurd," Zefthal sputtered. "They're barely interstellar." "And yet," Thale replied calmly, "they've managed to halt our expansion for the first time in 17,000 cycles." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The consortium had conquered or assimilated every species it encountered across 12 galaxies. Their technological and evolutionary superiority was the foundation of their galactic dominance. But the humans weren't playing by the established rules. They weren't attempting to match the consortium's strengths. Instead, they exploited weaknesses the consortium didn't know it had: over-reliance on predictable protocols, rigid command structures, and technological solutions. We have a decision to make, Thale concluded. Continue escalation against a species that thrives on survival challenges, or attempt diplomatic contact. As the council deliberated, surveillance feeds showed Riker Talos addressing a gathering of 27 species aboard a massive converted consortium carrier. Her words echoed through the council chamber. We're not building an army. We're building a community. The difference is everything. The diplomatic vessel Reasoned Discourse entered the neutral zone with shields lowered and weapons powered down, an unprecedented concession from the consortium. Commander Thale, now bearing the ceremonial title of Emissary, stood at the observation deck watching the approaching station. The Confluence, his aides had named it, a sprawling structure cobbled together from abandoned consortium outposts, derelict ships, and indigenous architecture from a dozen worlds. It floated serenely in the void, an impossible mosaic of cooperation among species that should have been incompatible. Emissary, we're being hailed, announced his communications officer. The view screen activated, revealing Riker Talos. The human looked different from their last encounter, more assured, wearing a uniform of unfamiliar design. Behind her stood representatives from species the consortium had categorized as everything from potential assets to evolutionary dead ends. Commander Thale, she acknowledged. Or should I say, Emissary? Evolution demands adaptation, he replied, using a human phrase he'd studied. Your coalition has adjusted our perspective. Not a coalition, she corrected. The Liberated Compact. We have terms for this meeting. 3 standard hours later, Thale found himself seated across from all 5 original humans in a chamber designed to accommodate the physiological needs of multiple species. The architectural ingenuity alone was impressive. You understand our position is unprecedented, Thale began. The consortium has existed for 50,000 years. We've never encountered a species that refused to know their place. Tavish Rourke interrupted, his voice carrying the gravel of someone who had seen too much combat recently. That catalyzed such rapid multi-species cooperation, Thale amended. Most conquered species attempt to fight alone. You immediately formed alliances. Lachlan Zurich smiled thinly. Game theory, Commander. Probability of survival increases exponentially with diversity of strategic options. Orella Viss, who now wore the distinctive biotech augmentations of the Sylvan hegemony integrated with her tattoos, leaned forward. We've learned 16 consortium languages and created a unified translation protocol that works across 93% of known sentient communication patterns. We want to talk, not just fight. Yet you've destroyed 37 consortium vessels, Thale noted. Defensive response, Dmitry Krov replied. Check your records. We've only engaged forces that attacked first. The negotiations continued for 17 hours. What emerged was unprecedented in consortium history. A proposed agreement recognizing autonomy for the liberated compact worlds, establishing non-aggression protocols, and creating regulated trade relationships. Your council will never accept this, Thale finally said, examining the terms. They already have, Riker responded, activating a holographic projection showing consortium fleet movements throughout the sector. While we've been talking, your military vessels have been withdrawing to the boundaries we specified. Your Supreme Archon has tacitly acknowledged our proposal by action, if not formal declaration. Thale's mandibles clicked in surprise. How could you possibly know? We have allies in unexpected places, Lachlan said. Species your kind dismissed as insignificant have been watching consortium activities for centuries. We just gave them reason to share what they know. As Thale prepared to return to consortium space with the draft agreement, Riker requested a private word. They stood in an observation bubble, Earth visible as a tiny blue dot among countless stars. Why did you really come to negotiate? She asked. Your military still outnumbers us thousands to one. Thale's 4 eyes focused on the distant image of Earth. Because we realized what makes humans dangerous. It's not your technology or physical capabilities. What then? You make others believe the impossible is possible, he said simply. Species that had accepted subjugation for millennia suddenly imagined freedom when you appeared. That idea is more dangerous than any weapon. Ideas are what humans do best, Riker replied. Here's another one: coexistence. The consortium hasn't coexisted in recorded history, Thale said. Riker's expression hardened. Then perhaps it's time for new history to be written. As Thale's vessel departed, surveillance drones captured images of the growing liberated compact fleet, an improbable collection of retrofitted ships from dozens of cultures, bound together by shared purpose rather than forced assimilation. Among consortium analysts reviewing the footage, a new term emerged to describe the phenomenon: the human factor. Against all evolutionary logic, the presence of these fragile creatures somehow elevated the capabilities of every species they encountered. The question no one could answer was whether this represented a threat to be eliminated or an opportunity to be embraced. The Grand Consortium Assembly convened for the first time in 7 centuries. Representatives from all 16 dominant species filled the massive amphitheater aboard the station Eternal Dominion. At the center, the Archon Council presided from elevated platforms, their forms representing the pinnacle of evolutionary advancement across 12 galaxies. For the first time in consortium history, non-member species had been granted observer status. Among them stood the 5 humans who had changed the course of galactic politics in less than 2 standard years. Supreme Archon Volus Dern's crystalline form shimmered as he addressed the assembly. We face an unprecedented situation. The entity known as the Liberated Compact now controls 17% of former consortium territory. Conventional reclamation efforts have proven ineffective. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew the catastrophic casualties suffered in the last major offensive against compact space, not from superior firepower but from asymmetric tactics that left consortium forces disorganized and supply lines compromised. The humans have proposed an alternative to continued conflict, Volus Dern continued. Emissary Thale will present their proposal. Thale stepped forward, his exoskeleton bearing the scars of recent conflict. The humans call it mutual recognition sovereignty. Each civilization maintains autonomy within agreed boundaries. Trade and cultural exchange occur through regulated protocols. Military forces establish clear operational constraints. Preposterous, shouted Archon Zeph-Thal. The consortium exists to guide lesser species toward evolutionary optimization. Abandoning this mission betrays our fundamental purpose. Riker Talos stepped forward without permission, a breach of protocol that sent ripples of shock through the assembly. With respect, she said, her voice carrying surprising authority, your guidance involved abduction, experimentation, and planned extinction for species deemed insufficient. We're offering a different model. She activated a holographic display showing the remarkable developments within compact territory. Species long considered incompatible working in harmony, technological advancements born from diverse perspectives, and most disturbing to the consortium observers, evidence of flourishing cultures. The Sylvan collective consciousness has merged with the Sien quantum computing, Aurelius explained, standing beside Riker. Together they've developed faster-than-light communication protocols that outperform consortium systems by orders of magnitude. Dmitry Krov highlighted another section of the display. Former adversaries like the Morosian Hives and Ventari collectives are now collaborating on environmental restoration of worlds damaged by consortium strip mining. Your evolutionary philosophy assumes competition drives advancement, Lachlan Zurich added. We've demonstrated that cooperation can achieve results competition cannot. Tavish Rourke, now bearing the marks of 17 different alien healing methods across his battle-scarred body, stepped forward. But make no mistake, continue your aggression, and we will respond. Every failed invasion strengthens our resolve and capabilities. Your choice is simple: endless war with diminishing returns, or a new paradigm. The assembly erupted in chaotic debate. For 17 hours, arguments raged across philosophical, military, economic, and evolutionary domains. When the final vote came, the consortium made the most profound decision in its 50,000-year history. They chose coexistence. One full cycle later, Commander Thale, now Ambassador Thale, stood with Riker Talos on Earth's first extraterrestrial embassy, a massive station in orbit around humanity's homeworld. Below them, the blue planet turned serenely, unaware of how close it had come to extinction. "Your world has changed remarkably little, considering everything," Thale observed. "Most species rush to adopt consortium technology when given access." Riker smiled. "We're implementing changes carefully. Human history is filled with cultures destroyed by too rapid advancement. Besides, what makes humans special isn't our technology." "No," Thale agreed. "It's your unique talent for defying expectations." Across the reformed galactic community, the human influence continued to spread, not through conquest but connection. The 5 original humans had become legends, their names spoken with reverence on worlds they had never visited. Riker Talos, the diplomat who taught cooperation to species with no word for alliance. Dmitry Krov, whose physics breakthroughs unified incompatible technologies. Orella Vis, who created the first truly universal translation protocols. Tavish Rourke, who trained the disparate compact defense forces in human resistance tactics. Lachlan Zurich, architect of the new interspecies economic framework. In consortia military academies, a new mandatory course was taught to all officer candidates: Human Asymmetric Response Strategies. The central lesson was deceptively simple: never underestimate a species that evolved on a death world. "There's something I've wanted to ask since our first encounter," Thale said as they watched an Earth shuttle dock with the station. "Your file indicated you were a deep-sea engineer before abduction. Not a soldier, diplomat, or strategist. How did 5 ordinary humans manage to challenge the most powerful force in 12 galaxies?" Riker looked at him with those unsettling human eyes that seemed to see beyond surface appearances. "That's what makes humans dangerous, Ambassador. We're adaptable. We survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinctions. Each disaster taught us something. We're improvisers because we had to be. Every human carries the legacy of ancestors who refused to accept defeat." She gestured toward Earth. "Look at our homeworld. We've nearly destroyed it multiple times, yet we survive. We fight, we make terrible mistakes, but we learn and continue. The consortium evolved perfect adaptation to specific conditions. Humans evolved to adapt to changing conditions." Thale considered this as a group of human children entered the observation deck on a school tour, their eyes widening at the sight of the ambassador's alien form. "They should fear you," Thale observed quietly. "No," Riker replied, watching the curious children approach. "That's the final lesson the consortium needed to learn. True strength isn't creating fear. It's building connections despite differences." As the children gathered around, asking questions that translator protocols struggled to keep pace with, Thale finally understood why the consortium's elite killers had feared these fragile beings. They were only human, imperfect, adaptable, resilient, and unburdened by the limitations of what others deemed impossible. And that made them the most dangerous and hopeful species in the universe.